What's up, everybody? This is Blue, and on my right is Disco, and this is Decentraland's. Disco, how you doing today?
I'm very reflective and actually quite positive and I'm looking just into perspectives and really kind of taking a step back. It's kind of a monumental moment for us in terms of doing the show. So I'm very there's a lot there today. I guess I can put it that way.
Oh shit! Yeah, do tell. I forgot about that. You didn't bring it up, and you didn't put in any show notes, and it just dawned
Yeah.
on me. So tell us what this momentous occasion is.
Well, it's as close as we can get to kind of our first anniversary of doing our first show, and it just kind of I look at those things as little times to reflect and benchmark and not to go too crazy out of the gate, but to look at things that I'm grateful for and look at the gratitude side of it. So it's been quite a journey, and I'm happy that we're doing another show right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So our first show, what was the date of it? I should pull out. I actually have a piece of paper. I'm old school and I jot notes down for like things to talk about. Like we've got our digital show sheet, but to me this is like I think once I write something, it sticks in better, and then I can kind of flow off that and connect the dots better than I can like through your more electronic media. But our first show was what? So what is it? Today's the second or third? It's the second.
Today's the second, and I think the first show was we put it up on like the 28th of September. So how the week flowed, that this
Uh,
really does kind of represent the first one.
and our first show was on Azuki. So it was basically we started this whole thing last year because I was a mixed feeling Azuki holder, and I was a little bummed at a lot bummed at the Elementals drop. You had come to Vegas with me in what was that, mid July? That was late July, and then we hung out, kind of like talked about old times, and then talked about crypto and stuff. And then I was like, I have to get this off my chest because they made too much money to be doing work, but. I think at some point you and I are going to do a show. I reached out to Zagabond. That would be interesting to have him on. And he said he would come on, which I think would be great to expand his audience. But regardless, I think you and I in the next week or two will do a big update because Azuki, for all the things they got wrong last year, like a lot of the suggestions we made, and it wasn't just us, it was the whole community, like they've been
Yeah.
making them. And now they're actually, again, with artwork and on and stuff that's off chain like an Azuki PFP, not necessarily a super fan anymore of that concept, but they've been really building cool stuff. They have anime.com. Like there's a lot of crazy stuff going on there. So it's definitely worth looking at what they're doing because it, regardless of my opinion and being with them for a long time and then kind of bailing, they're going for it and they're not lazy, you know?
No, they have a lot of I may go back and just re-listen because I think a lot of the things that were brought up, have actually been part of their roadmap of the last
Yeah.
12 months. So it's an interesting touch point for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, all right. Well, happy 1 year anniversary. You're right. We did this a year ago, and it's funny. Like, I would say, just looking back, I mean, this wasn't like one of these lazy, like, hey, let's do a reflection show on where we've been the last year. But it's been interesting because I think even early on, our instincts as far as like where interesting stories were in digging were spot on. I think our set is 1,000 times better. Like this just looks so clean to me. I think now, honestly, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, and my son gets his hair cut all the time. So I'm like, yeah, I'll come because the barber he found or the hair guy, we go into this guy's basement. He's got a barber chair in there. Ulysses, the guy's awesome. So I'm like, yeah, I'll get a haircut too. So I'm doing like every 3 or 4 week haircuts. And usually I don't get my haircut till it's annoying and in my face and I look like a complete buffoon. So maybe the show is influencing that too and looking a little nicer. I don't know.
Well, I think that I think we're on a different course because I haven't made the transition to not wearing these massive cans over my head. So regardless of what I would do in terms of a haircut, it's pretty much overshadowed by that. So when I make the move into more of the earbuds, then I'll be more focused on keeping the hair trim, which I'm sure is just very interesting to all of our listening audience, how I'm concerned about, then I'll change to have a different hairstyle. So, but yeah, we've been through a lot and we've done a lot of different formats, and we've been just kind of exploring and trying to find our groove and kind of the way to do it that works the best. And I will say that we've tried to experiment quite a bit and go and do things on different frontiers. And I think sometimes it's hard to kind of do it that way, being kind of on the front end, so to speak, of some of the moves with this video. But I do think that I'm very happy about the progress, and I think that things will kind of catch up to there being a need for kind of this video sort of show moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. We've definitely wanted to skate it where the puck is, I think, as far as sets and looks. And you say this all the time, and I think it's important early on. Like, if you're listening to this show, we're not paid off by any sponsors. We do this because we love it. And we've actually had a lot of people start to approach us. And the thing we tell everybody is, if I'm not into your product, or if Disco's not into your product and we don't believe in it, like, forget it. Like, there's so many, this whole space is filled with so many influencer networks, and it's all bullshit. It's all like separating people from their sats. Like, there are cool projects out there, and, in ordinals and in runes, and, I'll buy stuff, but we're trying to measure our own FUD FOMO brains so that the people out there can hold on as many sats as possible. Because the one thing I think everybody in the space knows is, over time, the price of Bitcoin, I don't see how it can't possibly go up like insanely high, right? So every time you're separating yourself with your sats, you better be asking the question is, A, do I love this art? And, I can afford to just buy this like it's almost buying a candy bar in expense that I'm going to, put on my mural or on my TV in my house. Or am I going to take a gamble that what I'm about to buy, is it going to outpace the dollar? Is it going to outpace Bitcoin? And that's a huge question to ask, because Bitcoin's been crabbing between 55 and 65 for the past couple months. And it always feels like we're going to have a breakout. And, I'll look at the timeline every morning and it'll be like, hey, we're back. And I'm like,
pumping
62. You're like, dude, we were here like a month ago, which is fine. Like, there's no rush, because it's always, when Bitcoin goes up, it doesn't announce itself. It just rips. And, look at the charts, but it's in real time. It's like watching, you're making your kids macaroni. It's like watching water boil. Like, if you watch it, it takes forever to boil, right? Metaphorically. And Bitcoin's the same way. It's going to rip. So whatever you're investing in, just make sure that it's got a shot to go up faster than Bitcoin. I love what Ski God said, and I know it's a big trader term, but the term edge is great. Do you have, whether it's a rune or whether it's ordinals or whatever you're trading, do you have edge over other people? Because if you don't, you're going to get your ass kicked by the influencer networks, and they're going to scrape all your sats up. I mean, period.
Yeah, it's kind of like, what's the term, that the anti-FOMO is JOMO. So kind of leaning into the joy of missing out on some of these things and kind of reversing that trend of being like, oh, I got to get in on everything. It's like, dude, enjoy that you're sitting at home on the couch and not getting involved in everything out there, because, we've seen some things, pump and drop really, really precipitously recently. So I know we go back to that, but when we really look at this last, year and kind of look at those trends and outcomes and kind of learnings that we've had, that's definitely a big part of it.
Yeah. And I love the learning aspect of this show too. We're going to have Corey Sats on tomorrow for a special show just to talk about rare sats, and rare sats have been popping lately. So I'm excited to talk to him about that. It's almost like Texas Hold'em to me. It's like you want to see how many of something there are. Like Block 450X, Block 9, sorry, 450X. There's 100 million of them. Rare sats, I think there's like gonna be what, 69,000. So I'm actually going to try and make a chart for tomorrow to show the big ones. And I think Corey's working on that too, but rare sats are fascinating. Like, cause when you think of runes, like why aren't 450X sats valued as much as some of these runes? Like, it's an interesting thought, cause a sat is also a sat, which now it's kind of mind boggling. As runes are in the UTXOs and a lot of them are going to zero, and some of them are going to go up big time, but we're excited about that show for sure.
Yeah, and definitely just want to kind of thank all the folks that have joined us, over the past year as guests as we've been doing that kind of exploration and kind of tapping into, some experts in the field. Every time we have Scribe on, it's like, you're going to a kind of like a university, and it's like I have to rewatch that and just kind of lock in and see all the nuggets of knowledge that were dropped and watching that exploration. And I know Dr. G really kind of tipped me off to really opening my mind and to understanding a lot more, about the AI side of things. So, as you mentioned with Ski God, it's just been wonderful to have, different voices and different perspectives. And we hope to, kind of create a forum and a network where we can kind of focus on the learnings. And one of the shows that really stuck out to me that really changed the course of kind of of a lot of things was when, we went into and you kind of walked everyone through kind of the ordinals and having, how they're actually on chain and how safe are your NFT, or, how secure really are your NFTs. And I thought that really kind of prompted a big dynamic shift in terms of thinking. So I really want to be able to be a part of more of those sort of programs as we look into the second year.
Yeah, the ordinals versus NFTs is interesting. I think that was our third or fourth show back in, call it late October, so almost a year ago. And that was a good learning experience for us too. And it made me an on-chain art maxi. I already was, but it just solidified that probably not going to buy anything on Solana, definitely not going to buy anything on ETH that's not fully off chain. But I find myself actually going back to that ordinals versus NFT. It was actually one show, if you recall. I think it was 3 hours, and we broke it up into two roughly 1.5 hour section, one just on ETH NFTs and how Bored Apes and how DeGods, a lot of these are, they're on IPFS, but once you stop paying that IPFS bill through Pinata or whatever system you're using, those things are gone. Like the decentralized servers all over the world don't have to put them on there. And we've seen from, who was it that just lost like 240,000, some very rare images in the earlier days on ETH. But they're literally not pinned anymore. They're gone. So you basically have something pointing literally to nothing. So that's why we love ordinals. That's why most of our conversation in the art world is on ordinals, because everything is on chain. You got the 4 meg block size limit, but you know what? That's what makes it beautiful too. I know OpCat's going to upgrade the functionality there, but I guess for me, like, I just love ordinals. Like, as long as OpCat doesn't sacrifice Bitcoin security, I'm fine with it. But I like Bitcoin also how it is, like where, you've got inscription numbers, you've got older ordinals, and you are limited by some of these constraints like block size. So with that comes rarity to me and tough decisions that artists have to make to keep file sizes smaller. Like you and I were talking yesterday about generative art, and you were like, why are these so small? I think that was the crux of the question. It's because code, generative art is code, and code is text, and text is small. Little, just look on your computer, look at your text files, like an Apple, the text edit file. Those things are like 5K, 2K, 1K. They're teeny, and then images are a little bigger. On Bitcoin, we've got a lot of people who have made images over there, and you have to make a lot of sacrifices either on color, or on file size. Certainly on file type, SVGs tend to be smaller, but the generative code like Chatfuckers and Eternal Tides and so much stuff actually uses text code to then generate these beautiful artwork and images. And that's what I'm here. That's what I signed up for. And that's what I'm going to keep exploring. Certainly with Vivid and those guys, what a great show that was a couple weeks ago. But it's been cool because you and I were talking every day. We're old friends from, we either met when we were 6 or 7, right?
Yeah.
So we were young, and we've been best friends at times, and there's been times where we haven't talked as we're raising families and stuff. But it's cool. We were talking every day, and then we were like, wait a second, let's just record a show because there's interesting shit in here. And all along the way, we're following not what's going to make us money. We're following what we're curious about. And like yesterday, you're like, dude, I don't want to talk about political stuff anymore. I'm like, me neither. Let's not, like, I think the election hasn't even happened yet. And what is it? 34 days. We're tired of it.
Yeah.
I Bitcoin's going to be fine no matter what. It's just US citizens in Europe and different places, depending on local rules and regulations, it just makes it easier or harder to get access to it and buy it and, be surveilled and tracked. So I'm all for Bitcoin, right? I'm all for the Orange Party, and that's what we're gonna foster on this show. So, has been a super cool year.
So just really quick, I think that one of the projects you were referring to that had an issue with the storage and them going down was Known Origin.
Yes,
that was
you.
That we talked about. So just putting that back out there. But yeah, it's just as we continue on the journey, as long as the pledge to myself and to us as kind of a show is just, as long as it's interesting, as long as it's compelling, and as long as we're evolving our kind of knowledge and excitement about learning different areas of the space, that's what's going to be our North Star. And we're going to always try to, look at things through as much of a critical lens as we can and try to understand that there are so many influences coming in so many different ways that really you just have to be, kind of hyper vigilant and aware and kind of look at both sides of things instead of just accept what you're getting. And I think that that's, what we're kind of getting at when you hear or you look at the TL and it's, influencers and this or that. And it's like, dude, we got to really check that, because you look at what's going on. This is interesting. So about a year ago, Bitcoin was at 27,000. So it's gone up 123%.
Wow.
ETH was at 1,600. So it's gone up about 49%. Yeah. But here's
ETH's definitely been the crab. ETH's definitely been the crab of the group. Like ETH, we love our Bitcoin. What's the kicker?
And then Solana was at like 21, so that's gone up 523%. So
wow,
it's just interesting to kind of take a second to benchmark that. And we're sitting there, a year ago, I was really feeling like I was part of this new class that came in that kind of, got not necessarily rugged, but a little bit like, dude, where'd all this promise go that I got in on? And, kind of holding through that and seeing Bitcoin in the, teens into the 20s making its way up. And now we're sitting again, on the cusp of all-time highs and a potential Q4 breakout, and who knows what can happen after that. It's just, it's been quite a journey. And I just appreciate, kind of having the contour of this show to kind of navigate my own development and exploration and education. And I hope that we can, continue to do that. And if you like what you're seeing on the show, as Blue said, like, we are complete independent media. We'd like to be that way. So hit us with a follow, hit us with a share, anything like that would be appreciated. And as always, any feedback is considered a gift. So any ideas for topics that you'd like us to kind of deep dive and discover, we'd love to kind of have that mission and deliver for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Disco. And the feeling is absolutely mutual. Like, I've learned a ton. And it also, Solana is the perfect example. It was 21 last year, and we were talking about it, and I was like, Solana, because I would never store my NFTs on there, and I would never buy them, and the meme coins and stuff. I was like, I'm not really into it. Well, it doesn't really matter what I'm into. Like, it's cheaper for people. It's faster. Does it go down 10 times a year still? Yeah, it does. And it's still fairly centralized. And, there are VCs involved and all these things that, as a kind of a decentralization maxi, I hate. But you were the one who actually convinced me, whether directly or indirectly, just being on the show, you're like, hey, you can rip on Solana, but it's going up. And I'm like, shit, I'm I'm putting some bags in there. I'm not buying DeGods over on there. I'm not buying art on Solana because I don't think it's stable enough and it's off chain, but I will buy the underlying L1 Solana for that ecosystem because it's getting used. Like, I'm going to go and put my money where the busy blockchains are. Like I said, I'm only going to collect art on chain on ETH, but more importantly on ordinals, which is all entirely on chain. But I still have ETH. I still have Solana, and I'm getting rid of all my L2s, which we'll actually talk about today. I've got all the shit coins and all the layer 2 crap on ETH. Like, I'm done with those. And if some of those just rocket and ride, I don't care. I'll be on ETH L1 and more importantly on Bitcoin as that whole infrastructure gets blown out with side chains and L2s, and we go through the same phase, right? But it's never a dull moment. But and we went in Solana, so I didn't get in at 21. I probably got in at like 60 or 70. But it's like 2x in a year. Be like, I'm happy with that. And I even went and bought a little more when I sold the CryptoPunk. So appreciate you and appreciate the old friendship and the conversations and just not taking this shit too seriously and having fun with it. And hopefully there's other people in the audience who like the same stuff. So again, independent media, we're not bought. We don't have a PFP collection that we're married to. I got to admit to you, Disco, we do sometimes talk about macro, and I have a confession to make. Well, it's a little embarrassing, but I don't know if I'm justified to make comments on macro because I was not in AP Econ in high school, nor did I take any AP classes. I guess I wasn't smart enough at the time. But so there not only did I not score a 5, Disco, I didn't even get to take the test. I was not invited to take this test, but yet here I am still making comments on macro. And one thing I will say on macro is it's fucking complicated. So if anyone tells you different, they're an idiot. Okay. Period. The end.
Yeah. I think that the thing that we've learned that is different than some of the things that are projected out there from the voices is that at the beginning and end of most things in this complicated world, nuance is a factor that should be celebrated and understood and explored. So it's easy to kind of go one way and bark out, all caps, this is what we're doing, or this is what you should be doing. But if you really peel back and spend some time, it's usually somewhere in the middle, and there's usually a combination, and usually, coercion and kind of screaming isn't necessarily the best way to get people to follow for the right reasons.
Does typing in all caps count as screaming? It does, right?
100%. That's how things are communicated.
Feels like a metaphorical scream. And I will say, if we weren't planning on doing this, but I guess if we're recapping like what we've learned in a year, like you make a really good point about nuance and celebrating nuance. And you and I from the beginning have said how important that was to us. Our shows used to run 2 or 3 hours and we talk about everything from kickball to medic to Skokie Scatter to every pretty much game that you and I played with our insane gym classes as a kid. Like we knew every type of dodgeball. Medic is the best one, by the way. And that was fun, and I think over time you and I realized probably like an hour's probably a good over under. But we also, I'm sure after talking kickball and kick the can and medic for so long, and bombardment, of course, steal the bacon. There's another guy. And remember the one where you had the scooters and you had the mats and you had to get you and the 7 people across the island. Like good thought exercise, good teamwork exercise without calling it like lame ass business school team building. So certainly a lot of things to reflect on, but I think we've shortened the show because we don't have to go there every week. And maybe we don't even have to go there every single, topic, but it's available to us if we want. Cause I've known you for, God, we're over 50 and 6. So like 45 years, which is pretty crazy.
I think that the games that you've that you identify as your favorites from that time all had an element of lore that you seem to like. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like Medic had the lore of like, oh, it's like we're on the battlefield and we're, you know, we're saving people. So it's a little different than like the old scatter or something like that. That was more basic.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if it's a lore. I think a good game is a good game. Like Stratego as a board game is a really good game. It was well thought out. You know, it's not as complicated as chess, but it was a smart game. It's well thought out. I think I loved Medic. And just for those who don't know, Medic is where it's dodgeball, but you have two medics two on each side, and they're in the basketball. They're in the key, the box under the basket. And that's the hospital. If you hit them in there, they're safe, but they can go down. If you get hit and you're on the front lines, you go straight down and you go down, and then the medics will come and slide you, you know, on your shirt or your socks, and you have to be laying down and they slide you back in the hospital, and then you're up again. So obviously once the medic's out of the hospital, you try and go for the medic. So, you know, some of those international rules don't apply to this game, but I think because the way the game was played, whereas in regular dodgeball, you would go out and let's say 6 of your people were out. Remember, if you got one of their guys out, I believe one of yours got to come back in. That to me, that was the baseline one. Medic was it was a better game, and you had to pick, like, do you want your most athletic person to be a thrower, or do you want your most athletic people to be a medic, or do you split it up? You probably split it up, right? So a good game is a good game, and maybe that's why we're here. Maybe that's why we love Bitcoin, because when we recognize our curiosity and we recognize a good game, we're all over it. Because think about, like, there are, every week you and I talk, there's 100 rabbit holes we could go down. And like politics right now, we're like, like we overexposed, over talked, like things are going to play out and Bitcoin's going to rip either way. But this game it's getting more interesting, and there's a trillion directions we can go. And that's why dodgeball itself as a base game is such a good game.
Yeah. So I think that it's a good framework to look at this, because we've also kind of come away in doing this for the past year to be like, you know, things in the timeline and that are trending tend to do so for a short period of time and then go away and become forgotten, right? So the key is really to look at it with a sense of wonder and engagement and kind of gamify it to a degree. I'm not talking about like the, you know, super tough trading strategies and I'm going to gamify, you know, quant stuff or whatever, but approaching it with that sort of an element of levity has been something that I think is really good, because I think that if you don't have that, it's easy to kind of go down toxic city and kind of focus on some of the toxicity that's present, as opposed to looking at like, wow, there's some really incredible things. I will say that, you know, doing or learning more about the generative art and actually kind of, you know, experiencing it and seeing, you know, how some of these projects have actually already come to life and how this is happening. And then seeing that that's actually, you know, on chain forever and will continually be evolving. Like, for a guy like me, like, that's fascinating stuff. And if I didn't have those sort of inputs to think about, then I think I may spend more time focusing on things that wouldn't push me forward as much. So I'm very happy to be able to see that stuff and to kind of give myself like a little bit of a advanced degree in elements of different things that I really am just dipping my toe into the water of learning about.
Yeah, and that makes both of us like because the more you learn, like Eternal Tides, that's the newest generative art piece that I just got. It's part of Shade Div from Vivid, but it's completely blockchain reliant. As each block comes, the subtleties go, and depending on block height, the waves change. So this is going to be an eternally changing piece on chain forever. And I've been talking to the artist Phenomena a lot. The guy is just awesome, but I'm just scratching the surface of learning about this one piece. Like every time I ask him a question, I have 6 follow-up questions. But You made a good point taking a step back about toxicity. You're absolutely right. Like, it's so easy to take yourself super seriously in this space. And, there's a lot of money to be made here, especially if you're on one of these insider influencer groups. And, I don't want to say I was in an insider influencer group, but I was in a pretty prominent OG ordinals group. And there's a lot of, depending on your pecking order and what early, there's a lot of money to be made. And I'm no longer associated with these folks, and definitely for the better, but there was a lot of toxicity in these groups too. And you kind of got to play like whoever the top of the pecking order are. It's generally some of these builders, like you got to play by their rules. And that's not how I live. Like for me, it's like, I'd rather be independent and make my own choices and be an outsider and lose out in a little money. Probably stupid in the short run, but probably smart in the long run. Right. So, but like, just ask yourself what you're seeing in the timeline. Like there's a lot of good folks and there's a lot of like positive influencers on the timeline, but like, just know when people are shilling to you. Like pretty much most people are, even the non-big influencers are shilling their bags. Like just at least know what you're getting into and make your own decisions. Cause at some point, like the more I learn about eternal tides, like right now the market's down and I bought it for what I think was just a song. It's a 101 that's eternal art, and the art changes and the color palette changes every day. It changes by the block. It's crazy. And this thing will be forever. Like the more I'm into it, the more I'm like, how did I get so lucky to get this? And it's not like this is the only one. I mean, with Lemonades, with Otto, with Nullish, with Xcopy. I mean, there's so many good artists out there. You can't even begin to name them all. And the more you explore, the beauty of this space over every other space is when you collect art, like not that these guys become your best friends necessarily, but you become friendly with them. And then you start having these conversations and then you learn so much more. Like, I think sometimes learning more about the art can ruin the art, but I think a lot of times learning more about the artist and just who they are and how they think and what music they listen to, like where the whole art was not over explained to you, like the whole process of that piece, then to me, it just creates a broader scope. Like my favorite collections from my ETH days were from the Nuclear Nerds, which, was a collection that's kind of burned out because they did another drop of Bad Guys and it was like 20,000. It was a terrible idea. But of the collectors, I loved these folks. I probably collected 10, 12 pieces of artwork from these people, like a mailman up in Seattle or Oregon and like all these different people who were just like getting their creative juices flowing again. And it was such an honor to meet these people, hang with them and collect. And now that I've come over to Bitcoin and kind of, I don't want to say like refined my palette, it's just been such a cool experience. And I'm proud, because my mom died probably 5-6 years ago. She was an art history major or art historian and used to give lectures for 40 years. Like, it's so weird that I fell back asswards, like it was meant to be, into collecting art, just like she did all those years. And more importantly, talking about art. So it's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah. One note really quick. When you mentioned kind of the influencers and toxicity and the timeline, the other thing that I just kind of understood recently was how small the space is. So when you're getting kind of shilled something, there's a very small audience of people that they're really trying to get to act. So it's not like we're having all these retail people in and there's all these people that are, that you would technically know more than, right? Like if you're seeing it on yours, it's probably something they're fishing from a pretty small pond, so they know how to do it. So for some reason, I don't know if I'm articulating that well, but it does make me kind of understand like, okay, they're going to try to serve this up to a select group and they're going to do maximum, kind of tactics to get you to feel like you got to jump in. But again, if you're just jumping in, not really knowing what you're involved with, we were looking at some of this stuff and I want to do a show on it in a little bit about like how much the venture folks are involved in some of these projects and what the kind of extent and reach and kind of that strategy is on all this. So as we've said, like there's just so many different angles to read about, to explore, to, kind of absorb, and then to adjust your playbook accordingly with your new information. So, there's a time when, certain projects really resonated with you and with me, and those things really evolve. And this Eternal Tides is a perfect representation of that. It's like, it's hard for me to get too geeked up on art for a PFP, now when I see that this is, something that you can acquire and collect and have, literally until, pretty much the end of time. So it's just, I think it's just part of, this, that we're on a journey, but it's the evolution that I think is most valuable. And I love, as you've said, just kind of the circle of folks that we get to interact with are all kind of, that pioneer, mentality of understanding that it might be a little unstable when you're in new ground, but it's so much more freaking interesting than being told what should be done just by kind of the mainstream media and society in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as far as, and we'll close this off, but this was actually a fun going down memory lane and last year, because we've learned a ton and we know what we want and what we don't want, and what our theses are. But, these influencer networks, like, obviously they figured out on Ethereum how to do this. And Ethereum got very territorial and toxic, and different influencers doing different things. And a lot of those folks, a lot of them from the old CryptoPunk days, and a lot of them, they came over from Ethereum, and a lot of them cleaned up their personalities where they weren't as grifty, and because they knew they had a second chance to get on the ground floor of this stuff. And just all I say is be careful who you're following. Like, I hope a lot of these runes and a lot of these things go up, but some of these people, like, claiming to be our leaders in the, in the space, they're not. They're nobody. Just like us, we're nobody, but we're learning, we're honest, and we're going to give you that take every single time we show up. And if we don't, call us out on it.
Yeah, please.
So, all right, let's jump in. This has been a fun recap, and I'm sure we'll do more of this. It wasn't a huge news week, but there are some interesting stories. The first one is, we didn't cover this as much last week as I would have wanted to, but there's a lot of interesting things going on with, I'm going to start from the beginning here, if I may. Okay. Hold on. So Lyn Alden came up with some really fascinating research, and it ties in with a whole bunch of things. But basically, the research stated that the Bitcoin correlation with money printer go burr, or the M2 money supply globally of the US dollar, goes up in the best correlation of any asset. So said another way, the correlation to Bitcoin and the United States government printing dollars either directly or indirectly, Bitcoin goes up as money printing goes up. Just to compare it, the S&P 500, the correlation is 81%. You got gold at 68%. You got bonds way down at 44.6%. But if you're betting that with all these wars and everything going on right now, that the U.S. government is going to print more money and have a bigger money supply globally, then Bitcoin is the best positive correlated asset to grow in that time.
Yes. So those are over 12-month periods. I see. Yeah, it reinforces what we've been saying, and it hits on so many different levels. We saw the interest rates get cut, and we saw that that's going to continue to happen. We saw that the different campaigns, one of them certainly looking to spend a lot of money if they get in place. So all that's going to, kind of loosen that up. And again, Bitcoin stands to benefit. This is another interesting slide. This was from, I believe, the BlackRock kind of pro-Bitcoin presentation. But again, it shows kind of how Bitcoin has reacted to geopolitical events, over the course of the years. And again, if you start looking at, outside of a 1 day or 2 day, which we're looking at now with the current, escalation of issues, we do see that, give it 60 days and we're probably going to see Bitcoin, hit a nice uptick.
Yeah. So basically what this is saying is black swan events, and even like gray swan events, like 2020 election challenges, COVID outbreak, US Iran escalation, the net is that often within a couple days, Bitcoin is one of the first things to die and go down quickly. But Bitcoin is also, after like 2 months or just 60 days later, it rebounds and then it has the biggest gains overall the fastest. So there's almost like an overreaction to selling off Bitcoin right away. Maybe that's to cover losses or shorts in other assets that they got wrecked on. But Bitcoin always ends up with these gray and black swan events spiking, So if you tie that with Lyn Alden's research, that Bitcoin has the highest correlation of M2 money supply and US printer go burr, then it's very obvious that, we're completely on the right track of holding Bitcoin, knowing that black and gray swans lead to more money printing over and over and over.
So just to kind of, it's also interesting because we're looking, obviously it was a rough day yesterday. I have tons of empathy and sympathy for everyone whose families or anything has been affected. And I can't even get into it because I'll get all torn up on it. But
Right.
Looking at it from more of a pragmatic Bitcoin perspective, Bitcoin's only down 0.62% in 24 hours. So that's showing an increased resilience that hasn't even, like that will impact this BlackRock piece quite a bit, seeing that, that was not even, it didn't even hit 1% of volatility. And so I think we'll see kind of the rubber band up quicker than in the past. And it's remarkable to see just kind of the strength now in this as an asset. And I didn't see like this massive fleeing that I anticipated seeing more of.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's another stat to kind of follow up on. And we didn't bring this up last week, so I want to bring it up this week because it ties in beautifully with Lyn's research and what BlackRock is saying, because there's a general theme here. Here are the list of top 12 Bitcoin holders in the world. So Satoshi Nakamoto holds 1.1 million Bitcoin, most of which all of those have not moved, right? Binance
Right.
at 673,000 Bitcoin. BlackRock now, this is a couple days ago, but at 359,000 Bitcoin. You got MicroStrategy at 252,000, the U.S. government at 203,000. And just putting that in dollar terms, Satoshi holds about $67 billion in Bitcoin, Binance 41 billion, BlackRock 22 billion, MicroStrategy 15 billion, and the U.S. government at 12 billion. And then you got Bitfinex, Chinese government, Kraken, Block One, and Robinhood, all in the like 7 to 10 billion range. So these holders, this is just the beginning of this kind of adoption and this corporate and sovereign holding of Bitcoin. Interestingly, there was a really good chart by let me pronounce it right, Demester, forecasting Bitcoin business holdings. Like right now, we're just at the very beginning. So right now, the current level of corporations is about 683,000 Bitcoin. Obviously, MicroStrategy alone is about a third of that. The rest, a lot are tied up in the ETFs. But by 2026, they're predicting like aggressively 943, so like a 33% gain, but even conservatively 786, so like a 20% gain. Like I suspect that this is going to be a hockey stick, and we're not even counting the sovereigns here. Again, we're just talking about these adoption trends that the amount of Bitcoin adoption is just going to go through the roof, because I think what corporations are seeing, what sovereign nations are seeing is that if the U.S. is going to keep printing dollars and spend more money than taxpayers give it each year, when they spend more money, obviously that translates to U.S. taxpayers as the secondary tax, which is the hidden one, which is inflation. So they can fund more wars and more everything, right? More than they're taking in. That's the only way they can just keep spending recklessly like this. The amount of Bitcoin held by these nations and these big corporations is only going to grow. I'm really curious to see who the first kind of big name US corporation is. I believe 2025, the new accounting rules take effect where holding Bitcoin in your treasury does not like hit the balance sheet. So it does not come off as like a liability. So I'm probably phrasing that slightly wrong, but I know January 1st, 2025 is when the tracks have been greased, making it easier for these corporations to hold.
What's your short list of candidates in the, to be leaders in that? I mean, it kind of seems like it would make, sense with Apple or someone, like someone somewhat in that space with a lot of cash on the balance sheet to kind of do it. But I don't know who's going to have kind of the fortitude to be, first in line with that. But an interesting thing when we were looking at the chart of, the holders and everything, and I know it's, we've talked about it so many times on the show, especially since January, but it's fascinating because I doubt Fidelity or BlackRock really had any prior to the ETF. And so you're looking at them getting into the top 5 within, 7 months or 8 months or whatever. So it's pretty incredible, just the hunger with which, has not been satiated by those newcomers. And then that's almost like compelling, Saylor and MicroStrategy to be like, okay, I gotta up mine and do everything I can to kind of keep pace. So it's as you say, like it's going to become much more crowded in there. And again, for the little guys and the retailers, like, when you have a chance, when you save some money from something, if you win a couple $100 on a gambling thing or whatever, put it into Bitcoin, and that's ultimately probably your greatest strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So adoption imminent. And just to finish that off, there's a great, we didn't cover this last week, but it fits in just in terms of adoption. Louisiana government is now accepting its first cryptocurrency. And I believe the first thing was actually accepted for Bitcoin for I think it was like a fishing license in here. I'm looking in the blue thing, but so Louisiana is accepting crypto. They see the writing on the wall. People know, like, you want to take the asset that's appreciating or the asset that's ever depreciating. And I think we both know the answer to that one. So moving along now, we go to, this is kind of interesting. ETH layer 2s, like I've been skeptical of them for a while. But I finally, like, how you have wallets all over the place and you just like, you got a little of this there, a little of this there, and it's hard to keep track of. And then all of a sudden I was like, you know what, like all these L2s, like maybe they'll rip again, but I just don't care. I'm not interested. So I started pulling all of, what I had, not much at all, but I started pulling what I had off of these chains, and it kind of ties in. Vitalik Buterin, and that is an AI generated image, and it's a creepy one, but I left it anyway. For those not looking, I believe he has 3 Adam's apples in here, and his neck is, I always was self-conscious about the length of my neck, but this guy's neck is it's like Giraffe Junior. But so what's going on with Ethereum? Vitalik is basically, he's been talking a lot lately, and this one's interesting, and this is what a lot of Bitcoiners say is like, the founder's problem, right? Like, how influential and how critical is he to the infrastructure of Ethereum? I think Ethereum is properly decentralized away from him and the foundation. I know a couple shows ago we saw the foundation was still taking a pretty nice salary of, what was it, 50 million? It was whatever it was. It was a nice chunk, and then they never really spoke about it, which was even more shady. So, one could argue Ethereum's probably not, like, the layer 1 chain is decentralized, but the L2 chains, looking into it, they're not as decentralized really at all as we thought. So I read Vitalik's letter, and, he's calling for things like projects, like he had some weird he had some really smart stuff in there. Like, basically, if being in a group or an insider group, you and I were talking about influencers, like if that matters, or who you're friends with matters for getting stuff done, then you probably aren't properly decentralized. Right. And so he makes a good point there, but he's also saying, like, with a lot of these L2s that they're not, that they should be, maybe donating to the Ethereum chain or the foundation. I don't know, but like, to me, that one didn't ring as good. Like, so you like, cause that's such a optional thing. Like, hey, look, people should donate to the base chain. It's like, no, it should be set up in the incentives, in the decentralized incentives to give to the L1 to validate, these L2s and stuff like that. So I thought,
Well,
go ahead.
yeah, no, we've been talking about that, and it's just, and you're, we're on the same page of, okay, how are these L2s going to benefit, Ethereum and being an Ethereum holder? And he did kind of point that out in the piece. He was saying that the projects succeeding should benefit the whole community, Ethereum holders and users, even if they're not part of the project's own ecosystem. So he's talking about like using ETH as a token more, so it's a fascinating thing. And it just does open up this whole kind of element of wanting to really understand how L2s fit in, and do they have to, kind of comport themselves in certain ways to be beneficial to the overall system. And, not to, as we look as Bitcoin evolves, like, it's something that we should definitely take the lessons from as we see this car riding down the track.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suspect, if we're reading between the lines at what he's screaming, I think there's so many L2s and side chains, and like, look at this. Like,
Yeah.
There's so many of these things. Zora, remember that was supposed to be the big, where is it? It's right here, 35 Zora. And like, look at all these red things. I'll explain what these mean in a second, but like, that was supposed to be the L2 for artists. And now yesterday, Harvey Rayner, who I love, has these noodles. And I wanted to get those, and I realized it was on a side chain called, I believe, Shape. Shape's not even on here. Eigenlayer, which obviously isn't an L2. It's kind of a restaking platform. That's not on here. I'm like, now that I found this site L2 beat, I was like, how centralized is everything? Like, they've had years to do this stuff, but I suspect, reading between the lines, Vitalik's really worried because the Ethereum chain sometimes is pretty busy, but it has been less busy, and it's been cheaper to make transactions on the main chain. These L2s can roll up in such bulk and mass. I don't think, even though they're using it for validity proofs and data availability to roll up or ZK up with the main L1 ETH chain, I don't think ETH is really benefiting from these L2s sitting on top of it. It's interesting case study because, obviously Bitcoin right now, Fractal's its own kind of just Bitcoin copy chain, but, L2s are being discussed, obviously with runes and everything on Bitcoin. Like, that season is coming here. Like, this is a big hot mess. And the more I see this, the more, I guess if I got in early, I'd be like, all right, I'll get in on these, but I would get out. Like, you were the one that told me, look at Fractal, look at that. It just fell off an absolute cliff. We knew it would. Somebody did a survey on X the other day, and they're like, is Fractal, like, you going to hold long-term, or are you going to flip? And it was like 99% flip. It'd be like, well, duh. And there's your flip right there. Fractal, as we learned from Scribe last week, is probably OPCat testnet. So there are benefits to it, I guess, where things can be done there. But I don't know, I guess, like, why would I buy art there? I mean, degen's get a degen, and, there's smart people out there making money, but, that's a big pass for me right now.
I find it interesting, and I'm not trying to be a smartass, but I'll make one comment. Looking at this list of the L2 beat, it almost looks like, the land of Bankless's old sponsors. It's like most of the names, like, I've only heard of when they were, sponsoring and the next best thing from the Bankless crew.
Yeah, that's a really good take. And just remember, they're more quote unquote angel investors, probably getting free shares to, we have no promises we'll promote it on the show because we can't link those directly. But maybe, it's an interesting topic. I don't see why we wouldn't talk about it. That's what Bankless lost me was I have zero respect for those guys now because they promote heavily what they're into. And then you can go to a sheet after the show and look at what, they have VC interest in, which is literally like you said, all of these. What a great take, but no, thank you. So let's get into this a little. It's interesting, and I'm actually gonna take some money off the OP mainnet right after this. But you've got these rankings by L2B are really smart. So you've got like Base Chain, which obviously we know that has 7 billion locked right now. Arbitrum 1 has 13 billion locked. Base is newer. That's at stage 0. So basically full training wheels, fully centralized. Base is obviously owned by Coinbase. So the proof system is still under development. Users' withdrawals can be censored by the permission operator. So they can freeze whatever they want, whenever they want. Upgrades executed by actions with centralized control. You have 7 days for users to exit. So basically they can do an update now that just locks you out of everything and everybody in the whole system. So that's stage 0, basically fully centralized. So Base, fully centralized. Blast, remember Blast from good old, that's so sad. I don't even remember the name of the Blur. The Blur NFT trading platform. That's what Blast is from. So all these things are they're stage 0. They're not even Starknet stage 0, ZK Sync Era, Scroll. These have a lot of, the ones I mentioned, Scroll, Mantle, Blast, OP, Mainnet, Base, and Arbitrum 1 have over 1 billion locked. Basically, it's 1 billion locked in nothing more than a multi-sig wallet with a bunch of people that we're going to trust to hold that money. So, but we're going to get into OP mainnet now. That one actually is a stage 1, and stage 1 has met all those things that stage 0 hasn't. So it does validate to ETH layer 1. It is more permissionless, but even OP, which has been around forever, does not, they could upgrade it now, and they could make an upgrade where that could lock you out or it could freeze your funds, and they could just do it. And there's no time limit out. But most importantly, Disco, I'm actually going to do this in real time. I had some money. I had ETH on the OP chain, and I've been trying to get it out. And if you'll look, basically last 7 days ago, like probably right after our show or the day before we did our show, I initiated the transaction to get out. What do I have here? 0.66 ETH. Then I had to do another transaction to prove. That was like 20 or 30 bucks. Then I had to prove it again. Then I had to wait 7 days, which actually just came up today. So that was just blinking lights there, making me wait 7 days. So to get my money off the OP chain, you did hear that correctly, I have to wait an entire week to get it off. Now, obviously, when nobody's panicking on these chains, that's fine. But what about when the next bank run for ETH is? This is my exact reason why I think Eigenlayer, you're restaking the staked ETH. So you're double staked, and you got this one guy and the bankless guys keeping massive amounts of the pie from that. It's just, to me, it's disgusting. And once there's a bad black or gray swan event within that ecosystem or the bigger ecosystem that goes down to that, people are going to be mad dashing for the exits, trying to get to at least ETH layer 0. And with Eigenlayer and then regular staking, remember, the more people that try and get out in staking, only a certain amount are allowed out each day. You are going to have to wait. So you are back of the line. So you are in a safe room in the top floor of a skyscraper that's literally the first 5 floors are on fire. You've got a whole lot of navigating to do before you can get home free to your layer 1 or to cash or to convert to Bitcoin, whatever you're going to do.
Yeah. And they really don't express that when it's all just bridge it over, and you do it. But I don't know if when you do the bridge, you're given kind of the precursor that, hey, if you want to get this out, it's going to take 7 days.
Yep, exactly. So as you've seen here, I just initiated the transaction, and you can't see it. Oh, it is right above you. You can see it. The max fee for this transaction is $70 in ETH. I have no choice in this.
What?
I got to get my 0.66 ETH off the OP chain. So basically, they are just like Peter Schiff did to me back in the late 90s when I invested with his Euro Pacific Capital. When they lost more money than even the stock market was down, which was 60, I lost 60% of what I gave them. The stock market peaked at maybe 51% down. They charged me extra to get out of those trades. It was until I begged and pleaded, and then it was a little more reasonable. This is the same thing, max extraction in order for me to get my money out. So I'm going to have to pay, let's see what my fee actually is, between $35 and $66. So why the hell, Disco, did I just pay $35 to $66? Remember, when I first did my transaction last week before the 7-day waiting period, that was $15 to $20. They warned me that this one would be like $15 to $20, and we just found out it was between $35 and $62. We'll find out what it actually was in a second. But what an absolute joke.
Whew.
So finalize. Wait, but I finalized the withdrawal. Do I have to do it again? Let's see if I have to do it again.
What?
I think it already did it. See, again.
No, it went through. It went
through,
and I think it was $39 for the fee because it's right by my large head that's blocking it.
No, that's 39.59 GUI. So it's 0.02771 ETH. So if you want to put that into CoinGecko, here, I'll do it. Here, just you talk for 1 second and I'll tell you what it is.
Well, I just think that it's the biggest question that comes to me is, what can be learned from this, as we look to kind of see Bitcoin go into this next era, and what can we avoid? And, just where does that all stand in terms of what the right strategy is going to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just did the math, and 0.02771, what I paid to get off the OP chain is $66. So I paid,
really?
Yeah, I paid the full max extract value. But you know what? Now I'm off the OP chain. F you, Optimism, for not making that more seamless. I thought the whole thing about L2s was it was supposed to be cheaper, but yet these bridges just gouge you. So bridge GG, not coming back to you. You say good game, I say not good game, you bastards. Wow. Anyway, so it just goes to show you, and the reason we're bringing this up is because it's coming, it's coming to Bitcoin, but with Ethereum, the amount, I think L2s actually did more harm so far than they've done good. I guess you got Polymarket, and they've shown a whole new level of betting on, mainly as we've seen, elections, but people are betting on everything now, but they're betting on wars and elections and all sorts of stuff. So there are interesting use cases, but as far as L2s in general, here in Bitcoin, take it with a grain of salt. They're necessary in the long run, probably to scale, especially if Bitcoin and ETH really pick up on the main chain with usage, but there is a heavy, heavy price to pay for that.
Wow. It's remarkable, just the amount of them. And I think the biggest takeaway I have is if you sort by stage on that, there's only 2 that are considered stage 2. So it's not as far along as one would have expected at this time.
Yeah, stage 2 is D-Gate V1, that has 53 million locked, and Fuel V1, that has 630. That's not even million. I think it has $630 locked, literally. $631. So those are the 2. One's a ZK roll up, one's an optimistic. Those are only stage 2s where they're fully according to this, not according to Disco and I that are decentralized. So be warned.
Yeah.
It's interesting territory out there, and you don't know who's behind all of these. There's great actors here who are furthering the network, and there's actors who are just terrible. So all right, this transaction was done. It'll be interesting to see where my ETH is, and we'll see if it shows up. I'll look after the show, and we'll see. And then
Yeah.
Eigenlayer, that trading just did go live that we know. Let me refresh the screen just to make sure we saw the latest. But
Ooh.
in the last, let's do 7 days. It hasn't been 7 days, but I mean, it's going down. But remember, they're very sneaky. They're not stupid anymore. Like, it's the reason it's not tanking faster is, look at this total. Where is it? Total supply 1.6 billion, circulating supply 186 million. So right there, you're at about 11% circulating supply. Of that, only about 40% of the circulating supply was airdropped to customers. There was a lot of lock provisions. So a lot of this stuff can't move because they've gotten very smart over the years at how tokens are distributed. It is down 18%. It looks like to me since it launched, but it could be way worse because everybody, I think, kind of wants to jump ship, but the token supply that's available, the circulating supply, isn't enough to just tank it immediately. It's like there's going to be no bank run if the circulating supply is only 5% of the total supply, and that's what we're looking at here. So I don't want to be a bear on everything, but Eigenlayer to me just doesn't make sense. The guy who does it with the bankless guys, they seem like charlatans at best.
So what's the market cap?
Of Eigen, the full
Yeah.
market cap is 630 million. That's the current price. So the market cap is 630 million, is the circulating supply of 186 million times the price, $3.39. The fully diluted valuation is kind of misleading. That is the current price times total supply. That's 5.6 billion. Well, the total supply, 95% of it's locked up. So what does
Yeah.
that mean? It's like, you know what the perfect analogy is? Remember back when we were talking about Azuki, and there's so many whale Azuki holders who hold like 10, 20, 30, 40 Azuki. I mean, they have hundreds of thousands of dollars, in some case millions of dollars in Azuki and elementals and beans products. Like, if you can't extrapolate the value of something based on the floor, because the reality is
Yeah.
a lot of those aren't for sale. And if those all went for sale, the floor would go to $10 because there's not the buying supply to meet the demand. So very misleading numbers, but
So,
it hasn't tanked yet, but we'll see.
well, I mean, it's just how many different ways are you going to, come at it from Eigenlayer, right? You're going to offer the restaking, you're going to have that go, and then you're going to drop a token. And then it's just
Right.
like, how many different ways are you going to just, kind of milk it is kind of the take I have. It's just like, geez.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So moving on to, I used the same image last week that you had because it was so good, the Trump burger. This is not about
I do like,
PubKey again, but Disco, you brought to my attention that World Liberty Coin is, we have information on how to get involved in this. What are the details, Disco?
well, as all of us who are, active in kind of the retail, crypto space are so fond of, in order to be considered whitelisted for the World Liberty Fi, you have to go through KYC and be acknowledged as an accredited investor. So that to me was just a huge kind of, I don't really understand how they're going with that approach on this. I don't understand, just the roadmap needs to be understood, and it leads to just this question of, is it going to end up being, a net positive for the space, or is it going to end up potentially leading to more questions and potential troubles. So it's just something to kind of keep an eye on. But coming out of the gate that way, I know that on the spaces that they did, they were talking about kind of the mentality being to be able to help, more everyday folks get involved and get access to this growing ecosystem investment, opportunity. And then, it turns out that at least in America, you have to, KYC and be a known accredited investor. And I don't know, that's kind of the most that I know about it at this point.
Yeah, I mean, knowing the legal troubles that he's in right now, and his kids obviously being involved, like in America with such murky rules, like I actually don't blame him. So one could seem like they're being very two-sided and like, oh, it's DeFi, it's decentralized, we're going to help marginalized people and anybody could get in on this.
Right.
And obviously they're there to make a profit. Let's not kid ourselves. But the reality is in America right now, if you want to be safe, especially if you're running for a second term in office, you probably have to KYC. So maybe more on that as it comes. Maybe Disco and I couldn't give two craps about that next time around, but it was interesting enough to bring up. And then the last thing that you dug up that was pretty interesting. So Stand with Crypto, the big super PAC behind supporting different candidates to run for office. Now that the election is coming, we promised we wouldn't talk about it, but here we are. It's coming in 34 days. That's pretty interesting. So you found that the amount of Democrats and Republicans was what?
They Stand with Crypto endorsed 39 candidates officially, and it was almost like a 51 to 49% breakdown of Republican to Democrat. So again, I think that the takeaway there is what we were talking about before. According to I would assume most crypto, Twitter timelines, it's really, skewed towards, Republicans are the party for this and everything like that. But you're starting to see, manifestations of an understanding that both sides of the aisle at this point, at least from a constituency point of view, appear to be very in favor of supporting crypto and getting it to move to that next level. And I think that, again, it goes more towards, I think obviously we need to blow up the current party system because it's not representative, and we need to really, really try to make that happen. But I do think that it goes much more towards a generational perspective. And, there are a lot of pieces and things out there where you look, in a lot of the communities that have embraced crypto are not necessarily the most well off from a socioeconomic perspective. So all these kind of things, I just want us to take a look at and kind of examine, like, what's the real element of who's in favor of it, who's critical of it, and what the real motivations are. So just seeing it kind of go, again, almost 50-50 from a partisan perspective kind of led me to take a step back and be like, I'm seeing a lot of stuff where it's like, hey, it's all got to go this way or it's got to go that way. I think that there's, I think, again, and I didn't want to start the show being like, a big long-term bull, but I'll go back to it. It's like, I don't really want to talk about the election right now. I don't really want to talk about the politics anymore. I just want us to get back. I want us to get past this point and get to the point where we can see, the true acceptance of this and the true impact and power of it. And I feel like we're just dealing with distractions until that happens. And I don't want to kind of feed into that kind of, toxicity or this side, that side. At the end, as we know, Bitcoin doesn't necessarily care. It's going to do what it's going to do. And it's more powerful than even, the US political functions that we think are, omnipotent. I think that this is one of those glitch things where you can't really be on the wrong side of history. And I think it'll really, really kind of be the wrong thing to have on your record if you're a career politician. And career politicians care the most about protecting their record and their ability to stay, and keep their own status quo in career.
Absolutely. Well said. And I'm not going to give any more life to the political stuff, but those are definitely good takes on that. So the final topic we have today is actually a fun one. This whole show's been actually kind of fun. It was nice to just lean back a little and talk about the show and the evolution and what we're thinking about and how it works. But this last one's kind of cool. So if anybody is curious how to teleburn an ETH NFT to Bitcoin, you're about to see. I have an
Yes.
MFer. I think it's MFer 2994. And I do love the MFers. It's CCO, Creative Commons Open, which I think is great. So this MFer could be put on any t-shirt, and a store could be made, a fast food restaurant, or any IP anybody wants. It's completely Creative Commons Open, which I think is the coolest way to go, just like nouns. So I've had this MFer for probably a year and a half. I think you and I bought our MFers around the same time. I bought a little before you, and I bought at an even higher peak. I want to say I spent like 2 ETH on this or whatever. And I think you got in. I think it had gone down by then, and you got a really cool one too. But this MFer is, they have on chain, from what I've been told, MFers on the ETH chain. I've never been able to do it or find them, but this MFer, the main collection on ETH, is not fully on chain, but it's about to be, because we are going to teleburn this MFer live onto ordinals. And the beauty is that back in the day, thank you, Owl, very much, inscription 4733 is this very same MFer. So I'm on ordinals.com right now. Inscription 4733, so sub 5K. It's the only MFer sub 5K. There may be one sub 10K, but I'm not sure. But this is definitely the only MFer sub 5K. And even in the sub 100K, I don't think there's many. So in true CCO light, if you want to teleburn, or basically burn your Ethereum NFT forever, it's quite simple. You go to ordinals.com, and Casey, being the awesome coder and kind of prankster that he is, but also knowing that how smart contracts works and how NFTs in general on ETH work, especially the ones that are IPFS or Arweave that aren't fully on chain. He was disgusted by that. So what he did and built into the ordinals coding ecosystem was to have an ETH teleburn address for every single thing inscribed. So obviously a lot of things inscribed in ordinals don't have an ETH counterpart, but if they do, like in this case, I'm going to copy this Ethereum teleburn address at the bottom, OA71 ending in 43. So just doing that for my own edification. So I'm copying that from ordinals.com. Then I'm going over to OpenSea, and I'm going to the transfer category for my, here, let's just go to my profile. Let's just make fun of Blue Toshi for a second, and we'll milk this a little longer. So just so everybody knows, Blue was Blue Toshi 2 weeks ago. Before that was Chicago X, but you know, as much as I don't mind the OX and ETH, first ETH addresses start with OX, so putting it at the end wasn't really that cool of me. But I thought it was neat. It was almost like a French, like Chicago. You just, the OX is silent. But you can see I've got my Azuki. I believe that's Azuki 6501, which I still do own. It's like the one NFT of value that is not on chain at all. It is on IPFS. It's the one that I have kept, and we'll see what happens to that one, because that one might also be a sub 5K ordinal. So we scroll down. We've got Seize the Memes, Freedom to Survive from our favorite boat and seafarer traveler, which disco I gave you one too. I got Terraform. So far I'm batting 1,000. Receipts, which is all on chain. This is all generative art. These actually aren't receipts.
That was kind of cool.
Receipts was cool. And then next to it, I've got my Genesis Meta 511 NFT generative art certificate. So I don't know if that one's fully on chain. I think it is. But so far in this top row in my ETH NFT days, I'm batting 5 for 5. Well, then it gets a little sketchier. We won't go to all of them. I got bluetoshi.eth. No one can blame me for that. Oh, there's some Bokies. Oh, here's some nuclear nerds, everyone. Yeah, those went to 0. Lo-fi disco. I was told this. Lo-fi was probably my favorite, like, collection that even that one guy in our little group told us, he's like, guys, as cool as this is, it's gone to zero because this team doesn't have any organization or cohesion, but they're still so cool. I bought I don't remember what these are called. Go ahead.
Those lo-fis were a vibe because you had like your own tune with it too.
That's right. Lo-fi did have a tune. Let's see if we can play the tune. Disco, good call. Is that coming through to you?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. We were actually going to use the grooves from one of these songs and I reached out to the lo-fi guys and I said, can I use this for anything since I own the NFT? Those douchebags never even got back to me. It was like, I couldn't even answer an email to see if I could use and promote their stuff within Decentraland. Those were in the early days. So this one is awesome. I believe this is Juice Bruns. This is one of my favorites. So there's some cool stuff in here. When Argentina won the World Cup, I bought this, probably paid nothing for it. 0010. I love her as an artist. I think it's a her. Super talented. So I've got some good stuff in there, but the more you scroll down, I've put a lot in spam so you can't even see it, but I have some just pure garbage in there. Used to be a comedy writer for The Rug. That was actually kind of fun and funny, but probably not worth much. But let's get to the MFer. Where are you? Where are you, MFer? There you are. So,
there we go.
So to get to it, I'm actually in OpenSea. I'm sure I could do this in Magic Eden, but I almost, for nostalgic sake, wanted to go to OpenSea for the old days. So you click on the three dots and you go to transfer, right? And then you just paste in the address, OXDOA, and then it ended in 43. I believe that was the same one, correct? Then we just hit transfer.
Yes.
Transfer your item and then sign. Your transfer is processing. So we have officially taken that MFer off the Ethereum chain. Well, it's still there. It's just in an address that nobody holds. So now this MFer, by transferring to that ETH address, is now forever tied to inscription 4733. So being CCO, this inscription is now truly immutable and forever on the Bitcoin blockchain. And I got to say, I love MFers. This feels pretty good.
Dude, yeah, it's like I've heard the terms, but I've never really gone through the process. So it's exciting.
I agree. And it was that simple. It was almost like anticlimactic. Remember last year I was talking to Brennan. I'm like, there's got to be a way to like make a big thing about this and like donate, like have people pay in, and then you have like a hangman, and then it would like that money would go to like Jake Chervinsky's group or whatever to fight for Bitcoin freedoms in DC. And then once, like, let's say it was 3 or 4 ETH, that threshold is met, then the teleburn happens. I thought that'd be a really cool concept. Maybe with the Azuki we do something like that. But with this one, I'm like, I've always wanted to teleburn this. I don't know what I was waiting for, but it was the perfect time. And now 4733, non-smoking 4733, not many MFers chose not to smoke, lives eternally on the Bitcoin blockchain, and the equivalent on the ETH side will never move nor be traded again. It is in a wallet just tied to this. So pretty cool.
Wow, that was awesome.
Teleburn, really cool. MFer, teleburn. So that's our show this week, everybody. Again, independent media. We love what we do, and we try and report things as we see them for real, as Disco said, with nuance. But if you like the show, please tell your friends. Please like it, retweet it, and all that other bullshit, because all those little signals, every little thing you do helps boost it. And you're a slave to the algorithm, so you play the game or you don't, which I believe was that was like episode number 8, because we're like, how much of a, we did shows on things that we were like, well, we got to learn it anyway. Like, how much of a pain in the ass is this going to be to try and get a Twitter following, so we're not doing a show in a vacuum? And it turns out there are things you can do that work, and some of it is luck, and some of it, as you and I both know, is just having a hot market. Like, you grew and I grew. When we were doing all that rune stuff, I went from like 2,000 to 7,000. You went from like 500 to 2,000 or whatever you're at, like very quickly. And now that we're kind of murky crabby, it's kind of like flat again. And I noticed pretty much everyone's in the space is flat until new people come in. So it's it's an interesting thing, but I don't know. Anything to add, Disco, before we say our official hand wavy political goodbyes?
No, again, just when I don't want to soapbox, but I'll cook and soapbox for a minute. Like when there's a lot of negative things in the world and a lot of uncertainty, the what you can rely on and go to are things that you really kind of are passionate about and that give you kind of that sense of wonder. And I think that there's more opportunities for that within this space than anywhere else. So again, kind of tune out the toxicity, focus on things that can kind of enrich your day-to-day life and enrich your path. And inevitably that will help, all the others who you come into contact with. So again, when you look at it and you can kind of feel burnt out, just know that there's always something new that's being cooked up and we need to just explore. And that's kind of the plan for the show as we move forward. So I appreciate all the support that we've had thus far and look forward to kind of the next level.
Absolutely. So
And
thanks everybody. Not financial advice. None of this is
as
financial
always,
advice.
this show,
It's entertainment only. Go ahead, Disco, take it.
yeah, I got a little cut there. As always, the show's for entertainment purposes only. Do your own research. Don't spend more than you can afford to lose, and try to keep that sense of exploration at the top of your kind of compass for this, and enjoy the ride.
Yep. Take care, everybody. Till next week.